Hi, this is Eric Bjornstad with Bell Performance. Thank you for joining me today for this Bell Performance video blog. Today we're going to talk about a guy named Samuel Pierpot Langley. Samuel Langley. Now, ask the average person on the street who Sam Langley is. Unless they are particularly well versed in history, they probably don't have much clue who Sam Langley is. But if we look at the Sam Langley story, then there are some interesting lessons that we can take from that. So, who is Sam Langley? Well, he was an inventor. He was an intellect, or an intellectual. He was maybe somewhat of a politician, but mainly he was an inventor and an intellectual. He taught at Harvard in the late 19th century. He also became the secretary of the Smithsonian. Now, he was an inventor in that he was interested in aeronautics. And that's where our story becomes interesting because turn of the 20th century, of course, there was kind of a race to see who was going to invent the first airplane. Now, everyone's bets were on Sam Langley. Now, how do we know that? Well, he had certain advantages. If you talk about money, not only did he have a lot of personal wealth, he had built some working prototypes that kind of showed promise in the late, maybe in the 1890s. So the War Department basically gave him a whole bunch of money and said, "We will fund you. You have the backing of the United States government. Whatever you need, you have essentially unlimited resources to get this done because this is in the national interest." So Sam Langley had the full financial backing of the United States government to do this. If you talk about fame, like we said, it's not like the building of the first airplane was a secret that snuck up on people. It was actually kind of the reality TV of its day. People were hanging on every word in the newspapers waiting to see who was going to do this. Well, the New York Times picked Langley, and they followed him around and reported on everything that he did. You know, Sam Langley does this with his prototype. Sam Langley's really close. And that made Sam Langley a really prominent celebrity of his day as he was trying to achieve this monumental feat, so to speak. So he had money, he had fame. If you want to talk about intellectual capital, access to the brightest minds of his day as the head of the Smithsonian, with all of his Harvard connections, he basically knew everybody, including up to the President of the United States. So you have a guy who's an inventor, who has unlimited money, he has unlimited intellectual capital to assemble the finest minds of his day, and he's even so famous that the New York Times follows him around and reports on his every move. So why is it that nobody knows who Sam Langley is? Well, that's because we all know who Orville and Wilbur Wright are. Now, we all know that it was in fact the Wright Brothers who achieved the first flight. How is it they were able to do that, but Sam Langley, with all the money and fame and smarts, how is it that he wasn't able to? Well, there is a contrast, a difference between the Wright brothers and Sam Langley. Money. The Wright brothers had no money. If you're familiar with history, you know that the Wright brothers were actually owned a bicycle shop in Ohio. And they had so little money that they had to basically fund their project with just the proceeds from this bicycle shop. They had to take 5 or 6 sets of spare parts every time they went out to test because they would crash 5 or 6 times and end up having to replace the parts. If you talk about intellectual capital, they did not do it alone. They did have a team that they had put together. The interesting thing is that not a single person on the Wright brothers team, including the Wright brothers themselves, not one single person had a college degree. None of them graduated from college. Sam Langley taught at Harvard. The Wright brothers were, I won't say college dropouts, but they didn't have a college degree and nobody on their team did either. Fame, well, obviously, they did not have the New York Times following them around. In fact, they were so anonymous that it was like 2 days after they achieved this flight that anybody actually knew about it. So how is it that somebody who had every single advantage you would think would be relevant, how is it that he was not able to do it, and the Wright brothers, who had every disadvantage, how is it that they could? Well, when we look a little deeper on a different level, what we see is that the Wright brothers were able to do this because of what they believed. Now, let's dig into that a little bit more. The Wright brothers were the whole point of why the Wright brothers were trying to invent the first airplane wasn't because they wanted to be rich and famous. No, it was because they really deep down inside believed that it was a good thing. It needed to be done because it would change the course of human history and it would be good for mankind that it would happen. And that is why they did what they did, because they believed that it would benefit other people. And what they were able to do is they believed this so passionately that everybody else on their team believed it too, and it galvanized their team. It made them work harder, it made them work smarter, and eventually their team was the one that did it. Now contrast that to Sam Langley. Sam Langley, I'm not going to say he didn't care about whether it was good for mankind, but he was in it for the money. He wanted fame, money, and fortune. How do we know this? Well, we get a pretty strong sense by the fact that once Sam Langley found out that the Wright brothers had beaten him to the finish line, so to speak, did he say, "Oh, I've been beaten, but I'm going to take what the Wright brothers did, I'm going to improve it, and I'm going to make an even better airplane"? No, he did not do that. He stopped. He said, "There's no point in me continuing," and he packed up and went home, or went back to the Smithsonian, wherever home was for him. He wasn't doing it for any goal bigger than himself. He was all in it for himself. The Wright brothers were in it for the rest of mankind. So what can we take out of that? Well, I'm reminded of something that Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes said, which is that if you're in business, like Bell Performance is, and you're trying to market to people, the thing you have to remember is that people, in the end, people do not buy what you do. They buy why you do it. That seems a little counterintuitive, and if you're a consumer and you've been marketed to by traditional methods, then you can probably figure out that most of marketing these days is this is what we have. We make this, and it's great. But what they're finding out is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So, for the Wright brothers, they were able to succeed because their team bought into why they were doing it. Now, you guys out there may not own a fuel additive company, you may not even be in business, but the lesson here is that if you are in business, or if you're in any kind of capacity where you're trying to get people to work together and work with you to accomplish a common goal. It could be a team, a committee at work. It could be a PTA committee trying to put something together for the kids. And people do not buy what you're doing. They buy why you are doing it. So that is the lesson that we take away from the comparison of the Wright brothers versus Sam Langley. We thought it was a pretty interesting story, so we wanted to bring that to you. So anyway, thanks for joining me at the Bell Performance video blog. And we will definitely see you next time. Again, I almost forgot. If you'd like more information, we did do a blog about this that's got a little bit more detail. And of course, we've got a lot of other great things on our blog. That blog is located at bellperformance.com, and of course we have wefixfuel.com, our wonderful educational site on all things fuel and fuel related. Thanks very much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.